Every morning, just before the sun appeared, an old man would walk to a wooden bench at the edge of the park. His name was Arthur. He moved slowly, with purpose. He carried a small thermos of tea and a worn-out book he never actually opened. He would sit on the left side of the bench, place his book beside him, and wait. At the same time, a young woman would arrive. Her name was Nora. She walked quickly, her shoes making soft sounds on the path. She always carried a heavy bag filled with papers and drawings from her night job. She worked as a security guard at a gallery, but in her heart, she was an artist. She would sit on the right side of the bench, as far from Arthur as possible, and stare at the changing colors of the sky. They never spoke. They never even looked at each other. This was their silent agreement. For months, they shared the sunrise in complete quiet. Arthur would sip his tea. Nora would breathe deeply, letting the light fill her tired eyes. The only sounds were the birds waking up and the distant cities slowly coming to life. One morning, the sky was especially beautiful. It was painted in soft pinks and deep oranges. Nora, without thinking, let out a small sigh. It was a sound of pure wonder. Arthur heard it. He turned his head slightly and saw a single tear rolling down her cheek. He looked away quickly, not wanting to disturb her private moment. But something in him shifted. The next morning, Arthur brought 2 small cups. He poured tea from his thermos into the second cup and placed it in the middle of the bench. Then he looked straight ahead, waiting. Nora arrived. She saw the cup. She paused for a long moment. Her hand shook a little as she reached for it. She wrapped her fingers around the warm cup and held it close. She did not drink. She just held it. And they both watched the sunrise together in a new kind of silence. Days passed. The cup of tea was always there. One morning, it was raining heavily. Arthur wondered if Nora would come. He sat under the small roof of the bench, the rain falling all around him. He poured the second cup anyway. Then he saw her. She was running, holding a large folder over her head to protect herself from the rain. She was completely soaked. She sat down, breathless, and took the warm cup. She smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile. Arthur nodded, just once. It was enough. The rain created a curtain around them. The world felt smaller, safer. Nora opened her folder and pulled out a drawing. It was a simple sketch of the park with a bench and 2 small figures watching the sun. She placed it on the bench between them. Arthur looked at it for a long time. Then, with a careful finger, he pointed to the figure of himself in the drawing. He smiled softly. Nora laughed. It was a quiet, gentle laugh that mixed with the sound of the rain. From that day, their silence changed. It was no longer empty. It was full of shared moments, small gestures, and unspoken understanding. Arthur would bring different kinds of tea. Nora would show him a new sketch every few days. They learned about each other without words. He learned she was saving money to go to art school. She learned he had lost his wife, and the sunrise bench was where they used to sit together. One morning in autumn, the bench was covered in golden leaves. Nora arrived and saw Arthur holding his book. But this time, he opened it. Inside, there were no words. It was a photo album. He turned the pages slowly, showing her pictures of his life. His wedding. His children when they were small. His wife, smiling, always smiling. Nora watched carefully. When he reached the last page, he pointed to a photo of his wife sitting on this very bench. Then he pointed at Nora. He was telling her that she reminded him of that light, that joy. Nora reached into her bag. She pulled out a small, framed painting. It was the sunrise, but painted with so much emotion it seemed to glow. She had painted it for him. She placed it in his hands. Arthur held it and looked at her. His eyes were wet. He mouthed the words, "Thank you." Nora simply nodded and turned to watch the sun rise above the trees. Winter came. The bench was often cold and empty. Arthur and Nora stopped coming on the coldest days. But they both knew the other was there, in spirit. On the first sunny winter morning, Arthur returned. He cleared the snow from the bench and waited. He waited a long time. Nora did not come. He waited the next day and the next. A week passed. Arthur felt a deep sadness. He missed her. He missed their silent companionship. On the 8th day, he arrived to find something on the bench. It was the small painting he had given her, but there was a note attached. It said, had to leave for art school. A scholarship. Thank you for the sunrises. I will carry them with me always. Keep this. It belongs with you. Arthur sat down, holding the painting. The sun rose, bright and clear, but he felt alone. He placed the painting beside him, where her cup of tea used to be. He poured himself tea, and then, out of habit, he poured a second cup and placed it next to the painting. Years passed. Arthur grew older. He still came to the bench every morning. The painting was now his companion. One spring morning, he saw a figure walking towards the bench. It was a woman, but she moved differently. She walked slower, with more confidence. As she got closer, he recognized her. It was Nora. She was older. She carried a portfolio, but it was new and professional. She sat down on the right side of the bench. She looked at the painting, still sitting there, protected by a small plastic cover Arthur had made. She looked at Arthur. And then, for the first time, she spoke. "Hello, Arthur." Her voice was soft and warm. Arthur looked at her. He didn't need to speak. His eyes said everything. She was back. She opened her portfolio and showed him her work. She had become an artist. Her paintings were full of light, full of sunrises. She pointed to one painting in particular. It showed a wooden bench with 2 cups of tea and a sky full of pink and orange. "It's called The Silent Promise," she said. Arthur reached out and took her hand. They sat like that, holding hands, watching the sun rise over the park. The silence had finally found its voice. It was the voice of a friendship built on mornings, on tea, and on the quiet understanding between 2 souls who needed the same light. And every sunrise after that, they sat together. Sometimes they spoke. Mostly, they were silent. But it was a beautiful silence, full of peace, full of belonging. The bench at the edge of the park was no longer a place for 2 lonely strangers. It was a home for 2 old friends, bound by the simple, sacred ritual of watching a new day begin.